Admiral William Hayes felt the ship shake as another blast hit their shields. He grabbed the edge of the command console to steady himself. The bridge of the USS Defiant was filled with smoke and the glow of emergency lights. Warning alarms blared from every station. Shield strength at 28%, called out Officer Peter Clark from the Defensive Systems panel. His young face was streaked with sweat and soot. Hayes looked at the main view screen. The battle was not going well. The vast emptiness of space around Alpha Centauri was now filled with the broken remains of Earth's finest ships. The crystalline vessels of the Jarkai Empire moved with terrible grace through the debris, their purple energy weapons cutting through human defenses like they were made of paper. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the Roosevelt and the Saratoga," said Communications Officer Susan Grant. Her voice shook slightly, but she kept working. "The Jefferson is reporting critical damage to their engines. They can't make the jump to hyperspace." Hayes closed his eyes for a brief moment. That was 3 more ships gone. The Terran Defense Fleet had started this battle with 47 vessels. Now they were down to less than 20, and the Jarkai fleet seemed endless, their ships stretching out in all directions like a swarm of deadly insects. Captain Lisa Morgan approached him, her face grim. "Sir, we need to make a decision. If we stay here much longer, we'll lose everything." Hayes knew she was right. He had hoped their stand at Alpha Centauri would slow down the Jarkai advance. For 3 months, the alien empire had pushed through human space, taking colony after colony. Alpha Centauri was supposed to be where they finally stopped them. Instead, it was becoming a graveyard for Earth's defenders. "New contacts," shouted the sensor officer, Daniel Wright. "Jarkai reinforcements entering the system. At least 30 more ships." The bridge fell silent. They all knew what that meant. Hayes straightened his back and made the hardest decision of his 30-year military career. "Send the signal to all remaining vessels. We are retreating. Fall back to Earth." Captain Morgan nodded and turned to relay the orders. No one looked happy, but no one argued either. They had fought well, but this battle was lost. "What about the Jefferson?" asked Susan. "They can't make the jump." Hayes felt a cold weight in his stomach. "Tell them to launch escape pods toward the inner system. We'll try to pick them up once we regroup." He knew it was a small hope. The Jarkai didn't take prisoners. Not living ones anyway. The ship rocked again as another blast hit them. The lights flickered. "Get us out of here," Hayes ordered. "Make the jump as soon as all functioning ships are ready." As the crew rushed to carry out his orders, Hayes moved to the rear viewing screen. He watched as the crystal ships of the Jarkai closed in on the damaged human vessels that couldn't escape. The Jefferson fought bravely, its remaining weapons firing until the very end. Then a concentrated blast from 3 enemy ships cut it in half. The explosion was brief and bright against the darkness of space. "All remaining ships reporting ready for jump, Admiral," said Captain Morgan. "Execute," Hayes said, his eyes still on the destruction behind them. The stars streaked as the USS Defiant entered hyperspace, leaving the battle behind. But Hayes knew they weren't leaving the war. The Jarkai would be coming for Earth next. In the quiet of hyperspace, Hayes called his senior officers to the ship's conference room. The faces around the table were tired and defeated. "We lost nearly 60% of our fleet today," Hayes told them, though they all knew already. "Earth's outer defensive line is gone. The Jarkai will reach our solar system within 2 weeks," said Strategic Officer Alan Rhodes. He pulled up a map on the display table, showing the enemy's projected course. "With the forces they have, they could reach Earth in less than a month." "Do we have any ships in reserve?" asked Captain Morgan. "Anything that wasn't committed to the battle?" Hayes shook his head. "Nothing that would make a difference. We threw everything we had at them." The room fell silent again. Outside, the blue glow of hyperspace streaked past the windows. They were running home to a planet that would soon face the same enemy that had just crushed them. "There's one thing," Hayes said finally. "General Kevin Rodriguez on Mars. Project Phoenix." Rhodes looked up sharply. "That's still just in development. They can't possibly be ready." "They'll have to be," said Hayes. I'll contact Rodriguez as soon as we drop out of hyperspace. He needs to know what happened here. Later, alone in his quarters, Hayes recorded messages to the families of those lost in the battle. It was an old tradition, one he had followed throughout his career, but never had he needed to record so many. When he finished, he stood at his window and watched the shifting colors of hyperspace. His thoughts turned to what waited on Mars. Project Phoenix had been Earth's backup plan, a secret development of new ships and weapons based partly on captured Jarkai technology. It was supposed to take years to complete. They now had weeks, at most. Hayes remembered his last conversation with General Rodriguez 6 months ago. The man had been confident, almost excited about the possibilities of the new fleet design. If this works, Rodriguez had said, it will change everything. These won't just be better ships, William. They'll be something the galaxy has never seen before. Hayes hoped he was right, because right now, hope was all they had left. As the USS, Defiant and the remaining fleet approached Earth, Hayes prepared to deliver the news of their defeat. But he also carried a message for the leaders of Earth. This war wasn't over. The Empire thought they had broken humanity's will to fight. That would be their biggest mistake. The Jarkai didn't understand humans. When pushed to the edge, when defeat seemed certain, that was when humans fought the hardest. And somewhere beneath the red soil of Mars, Earth's true strength was waiting. Hayes looked at the picture of Earth growing larger on his screen. Home. The one place worth fighting for, no matter the odds. They think it's over, he whispered to himself. Let them think that. The air was stale in the deep underground facilities of Mars. General Kevin Rodriguez walked through the massive hangar, his footsteps echoing across the metal floor. Above him, carved into the red Martian rock, was the largest secret humanity had ever kept. Ships, hundreds of them. Not the outdated vessels that had just been destroyed at Alpha Centauri, but something new, something better. General, we just received the report from Admiral Hayes, said his aide, Lieutenant Paul Green. The battle at Alpha Centauri was lost. The Terran defense fleet has been destroyed. Rodriguez nodded slowly. He had expected this news, but it still hit him hard. Casualties? Over 60% of our ships lost. The rest are retreating to Earth. Rodriguez looked up at the nearest vessel in the hangar. Unlike the boxy, practical design of Earth's previous warships, this one was sleek and predatory. Its hull gleamed with a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. How soon can we be ready? He asked. Lieutenant Green checked his tablet. Dr. Carter says the first wave could launch in 3 weeks, but to have the full fleet operational would take at least 2 months. We don't have 2 months, Rodriguez said. Tell Elizabeth I need to see her right away. The command center of Project Phoenix was buried even deeper than the hangars, protected by hundreds of feet of Martian rock. Dr. Elizabeth Carter was waiting when Rodriguez arrived. Her normally tidy office was covered with blueprints and display screens showing various systems of the new fleet. I heard about Alpha Centauri, she said as he entered. I'm sorry, Kevin. Rodriguez had lost friends in that battle. They both had. But there was no time for grief now. The Jarkai will reach Earth within a month, he said. We need to move. Up our timeline. Elizabeth frowned. The ships aren't ready. We've integrated the Jarkai tech into our systems, but we haven't had time to fully test everything. We're out of time, Rodriguez said firmly. The Earth forces that are left can't stop the Empire. These ships are our only chance. Elizabeth walked to a large display showing the status of each vessel in the fleet. She tapped a few controls, reviewing the data. We can have 50 ships ready in 2 weeks, she said finally. Not fully tested, but functional. The rest would take longer. 50 will have to do for the first wave, Rodriguez decided. We'll send pilots and crews through the accelerated training program. That's not enough time to master these systems, Elizabeth warned. It's all the time we have, Rodriguez replied. Later that day, Rodriguez addressed the Project Phoenix team. 5,000 of Earth's best engineers, pilots, and soldiers stood in the main assembly area. They had been living under the Martian surface for months, working around the clock to build humanity's second chance. By now you've all heard about Alpha Centauri, Rodriguez began. Our main fleet has been defeated. The Jarkai believe they've broken our ability to fight back. He paused, looking across the sea of faces. Some showed fear, others anger. All showed determination. They're wrong, he continued. While they've been focused on our conventional forces, we've been building something they don't expect. Something they can't predict. He pressed a button on his podium and the wall behind him became transparent, revealing the vast hangar beyond. The assembled crowd gasped as they saw the full scale of the fleet for the first time. This is humanity's real strength, Rodriguez said. Not just our ships or our weapons, but our ability to adapt, to take a defeat and turn it into an opportunity. The new ships were unlike anything Earth had built before. Using technology captured from a crashed Jarkai scout ship 3 years ago, Earth scientists had made breakthroughs in several key areas. The new vessels had shields that could absorb enemy fire and convert it to energy. Their weapons were hybrid systems that combined human ingenuity with alien power sources. We need to accelerate our timeline, Rodriguez told the crowd. The first 50 ships will launch in 2 weeks. I need volunteers for the crews. Every hand in the room went up. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Pilots trained day and night in simulators learning to handle the new ships. Engineers worked without rest to complete the critical systems. Weapons specialists calibrated the new armaments, each more powerful than anything humans had wielded before. Rodriguez rarely slept. When he did, his dreams were filled with the faces of those who had died at Alpha Centauri. He knew many more would die in the coming battle, but if they succeeded, humanity would survive. On the day before the planned launch, Rodriguez met with the ship captains in the command center. Maps of the solar system covered the screens, showing the positions of the advancing Jarkai fleet. The enemy believes they're facing a beaten opponent, Rodriguez told them. They've spread their forces thin, focusing on securing the outer colonies they've already taken. Their main attack fleet is here, approaching Jupiter. He pointed to a cluster of red dots moving slowly through the solar system. Our plan is simple but risky, he continued. While Earth's remaining ships engage them head-on in a defensive action, our fleet will launch from Mars and strike at their supply lines and rear positions. If we can cut them off and surround them, we have a chance. Captain Linda Scott, who would command the lead ship, raised her hand. Sir, what about their homeworld? Our intel says they've left it lightly defended. Rodriguez nodded. That's phase 2. If we succeed in disrupting their advance on Earth, we'll take the fight directly to them. The Empire has never faced a counter-invasion. They won't expect it. The captains looked at each other. The plan was bold, perhaps even desperate. But no one objected. As the meeting ended, Elizabeth Carter approached Rodriguez. The flagship is ready for your inspection, General. They walked together to the largest ship in the hangar. Unlike the others, which were attack vessels designed for speed and power, this one was built to command. Its bridge contained advanced communication systems that could coordinate an entire fleet across vast distances. What did you name it? Elizabeth asked as they stood before the massive ship. Rodriguez looked up at the dark hull where workers were just finishing painting the name. USS Reckoning, he replied, because that's what's coming for the Jarkai Empire. A reckoning for everything they've done to us. Elizabeth nodded. Fitting. As night fell on Mars, the final preparations were made. Tomorrow, humanity would reveal its hidden strength. The Empire thought it was over, that Earth was defeated. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The red sky of Mars glowed through the observation window. Lieutenant John Miller stood with his hands behind his back, watching as the massive bay doors of the underground facility slowly opened. 6 months ago, he had been a civilian engineer, working in Boston. Now he was an officer in Earth's secret Second Fleet, preparing for a mission that would decide the fate of humanity. Hard to believe it's finally happening, said Frank Daniels, his roommate and fellow officer. Seems like we've been hiding under this red dirt forever. Miller nodded. The Jarkai took everything from me. My parents, my sister, my home. He thought of Columbus, Ohio, where he had grown up. The news reports had shown it burning after the first wave of attacks. They think we're finished. They think we're cowering in fear. Well, they're in for a surprise, Daniels replied, gesturing to the scene below them. From their position on the upper observation deck, they could see the entire main hangar. It was alive with activity as final preparations were made. Pilots ran pre-flight checks on their ships. Ground crews loaded the last weapons and supplies. Medical teams set up emergency stations. Everyone moved with purpose, knowing what was at stake. In the center of it all stood Colonel Patricia Wright, delivering final orders to the assembled ship captains. Wright had been one of the first officers recruited for Project Phoenix. Her reputation for tactical brilliance had made her the natural choice to lead the first wave of attacks. "Remember your targets," she told the captains, her voice carrying across the hangar. "We're not just hitting one location. We're striking at 12 points across their supply lines simultaneously. Speed and surprise are our advantages. Use them well." The plan was bold. Instead of directly defending Earth, the Second Assault Fleet would attack the Empire's supply lines and bases throughout the solar system. They would cut off the main Jarkai force from reinforcements, then close in for the kill. Miller and Daniels made their way down to the hangar floor. They were assigned to the USS Valiant, one of the smaller, faster attack ships designed for hit-and-run missions. Their captain, Laura Collins, was already at the ship when they arrived. "Lieutenant Miller Daniels, good timing," she said. "We just received our final mission parameters. We're targeting the Jarkai fuel depot on Titan." Saturn's largest moon had been turned into a refueling station by the Empire after they took control of the outer planets. Without it, many of their ships would be stranded. "How heavily defended is it?" asked Miller. "Intelligence shows minimal protection," Collins replied. "They don't expect an attack this far out from Earth. That's why we need to hit all targets at once before they can react." Inside the ship, the crew was completing final systems checks. The USS Valiant was unlike any vessel humans had built before. Its sleek design was complemented by technology that blended human innovation with Jarkai engineering. The pilot seats were surrounded by holographic displays rather than traditional screens. The weapon systems were tied directly to advanced targeting computers that could calculate trajectories faster than human reflexes. At the communications station, Officer Samantha Lee was establishing the secure channel that would coordinate the simultaneous launch of over 300 ships. "All ships reporting ready, Captain," she announced. "We're linked to the command network." "Good," Collins replied. "Take your stations. Launch in 20 minutes. As Miller took his position at the tactical systems console, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, certainly, but also a fierce determination. For 6 months, while Earth had suffered under Jarkai attacks, they had prepared in secret. Now it was time to hit back. Across the hangar, similar scenes played out on hundreds of ships. Crews made final checks. Captains reviewed mission plans. Engineers monitored power levels and shield strength. In the command center beneath the hangar, General Rodriguez and Dr. Carter watched the preparations on large screens. The fate of their project, and possibly all of humanity, would be decided in the next few hours. "Do you think it will work?" Elizabeth asked quietly. Rodriguez considered the question carefully. "The ships will work. The technology is sound. But war is never just about technology. It's about people, courage, will." He looked at the screens showing crews preparing for battle. "And I believe in them." A voice came over the comm system. 15 minutes to launch, all personnel clear the hangar floor." Ground crews finished their work and moved to safe areas. The massive ships, which had been built in these underground caverns, prepared to leave their birthplace for the first time on the USS Reckoning. Admiral Nancy Reeves took command of the bridge. She had been one of the few high-ranking officers brought into Project Phoenix from the beginning. Now she would lead the counteroffensive. "Status report," she called out. "All systems green, Admiral," replied her first officer. "Fleet communications linked. Weapons and shields at full capacity." Reeves nodded and opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Reeves. In a few minutes, we launch humanity's response to the Jarkai invasion. You all know what's at stake. Earth, our families, our future. She paused, looking at the crew around her. They were ready. The enemy believes they've won. They think humanity is beaten. Today we show them how wrong they are. Today we fight back. As her words echoed through every ship in the fleet, the final countdown began. 10 minutes. 5. 3. The massive bay doors finished opening, revealing the red Martian sky above. The first row of ships activated their engines, lifting slowly. From the hangar floor, "USS Valiant, you are cleared for launch," came the control room's voice over Miller's comm. Captain Collins nodded to her pilot. "Take us up." The ship's engines hummed to life, and Miller felt the deck vibrate beneath his feet. The Valiant rose smoothly, joining the formation of vessels now emerging from the Martian base. One by one, then in groups, the ships of humanity's second assault fleet took to the sky. They formed up in attack squadrons, their dark hulls reflecting the red light of Mars. 300 ships, each more advanced than anything Earth had fielded before. As they cleared the atmosphere, Admiral Reeves gave the order they had all been waiting for. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. Operation Counterattack begins now." The stars stretched into lines of light as the fleet made the jump, vanishing from the Martian sky. The Empire thought it was over. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Jarkai outpost orbiting Neptune had stood unchallenged for months. Its crystal towers rose from the space station's core, glowing with purple energy that powered their scanners and weapons. The alien soldiers inside had grown comfortable, lazy. They believed the war was nearly over, with only Earth itself left to conquer. They were wrong. Commander George Wilson stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance as it dropped out of hyperspace just 5,000 miles from the outpost. The new ship's stealth systems had worked perfectly. The Jarkai had no warning. "Target their communication array first," Wilson ordered, "then weapons and shields." Ryan Bennett, the tactical officer, responded immediately. Targeting locked. Firing. The weapons of the USS Vengeance were unlike anything humanity had used before. They combined traditional human missiles with energy beams based on captured Jarkai technology. The result was devastating. The first volley struck the outpost's communication tower, shattering it instantly. The second hit their main weapon, Banks, before they could even power up. The third disabled their shields. "Sir, the outpost is launching fighters," reported Sensor Officer Julia Ward. Wilson watched calmly as a dozen small Jarkai vessels emerged from the outpost's hangar bay. They were quick but disorganized. Their pilots had never expected to face a real battle here, so far from the front lines. "Deploy our own fighters," Wilson ordered, "and bring us around for another attack run on the main station." 20 fighters launched from the Vengeance, their engines flaring blue against the darkness of space. They were smaller than traditional Earth fighters, but far more agile. Their pilots had trained for months in simulators designed to exploit every weakness in Jarkai combat techniques. The battle was brief and one-sided. The human fighters moved with unexpected speed, their new shields absorbing enemy fire while their hybrid weapons cut through the Jarkai vessels. Within minutes, the alien fighters were reduced to floating debris. On the main view screen, Wilson could see the outpost itself beginning to break apart. Explosions bloomed silently in the vacuum of space, sending chunks of crystal structure spinning away. "Sir, we're detecting escape pods launching from the station," reported Bennett. "Let them go," Wilson decided. "Let them run back to their empire. Let them tell their leaders what they saw here today." This was just one of 12 simultaneous attacks across the solar system. From his tactical display, Wilson could see that the other strikes were going equally well. The second assault fleet had reclaimed humanity's territory with shocking speed. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the USS Reckoning," said Communications Officer Diana Evans. "Admiral Reeves wants to speak with all ship commanders." Wilson nodded, and a moment later, Admiral Nancy Reeves appeared on screen. Her expression was serious but satisfied. "Commanders, the first phase of our operation has succeeded," she announced. "All 12 targets have been neutralized or are in the process of being secured. We've re-established human control of the outer planets with minimal losses." There was a brief cheer from some of the crew members on Wilson's bridge. He didn't stop them. They had earned this moment. Our next target, Reeves continued, is the Jarkai Command Center on Europa. Intelligence reports confirm that their invasion commander, High General Vexcor, has established his headquarters there. From Europa, he has been directing the attacks on Earth and our colonies. Wilson studied the tactical data that appeared alongside Reeves's image. Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, had been one of the first locations taken by the Jarkai when they entered the solar system. They had built a massive base beneath its frozen surface, protected by both natural and artificial defenses. This will not be as easy as our first strikes, Reeves warned. The enemy is entrenched and they will have time to prepare once they learn of our attacks today. But we must press our advantage. The plan called for the fleet to regroup near Ganymede, another of Jupiter's moons, before launching a coordinated attack on Europa. They would have approximately 6 hours to repair any damage and prepare their crews. As the transmission ended, Wilson turned to his officers. Begin damage assessment and repairs. I want this ship ready for battle in 4 hours. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out on hundreds of human vessels. The first wave of attacks had been successful beyond all expectations. Now they prepared for the real test. Aboard the USS Valiant, near Saturn's moon Titan, Captain Laura Collins watched as her crew secured the captured Jarkai fuel depot. The mission had gone smoothly. The aliens had been caught completely by surprise and resistance had been minimal. Status report, she called to her officers. Minimal damage to our ships, replied her second-in-command. The depot is secure. We've taken 12 prisoners. Lieutenant John Miller approached from the tactical station. Captain, we've accessed their computer systems. We've found something important. He handed her a datapad showing translated Jarkai fleet movements. Collins studied it carefully, then contacted the fleet command immediately. Admiral Reeves, we've captured intelligence indicating the Jarkai are moving their reserve fleet from their home system. They're sending everything they have left toward Earth. This changed things. If the Jarkai were committing their reserves, it meant they understood the threat the human fleet now posed. The element of surprise would soon be gone. On the USS Reckoning, Admiral Reeves called an emergency meeting with her top commanders. They gathered in the ship's strategic command center, surrounding a three-dimensional map of the solar system. The Jarkai are panicking, said Colonel Patricia Wright. They never expected a counterattack of this magnitude. Which means they'll fight even harder now, replied Reeves. They can't afford to lose this war any more than we can. The plan needed to change. Instead of regrouping and then attacking Europa, they would split their forces. Half would continue, with the attack on the Jarkai headquarters, while the other half would move to intercept the incoming enemy reinforcements. It's risky, admitted General Rodriguez, who had joined them from Mars via secure communication. But if we wait for their reserves to arrive, we lose our momentum. Reeves made her decision. Commander Wilson, your battle group will lead the Jar attack on Europa. I'll take the Reckoning and half the fleet to intercept their reinforcements near Jupiter's orbit. As the meeting ended and officers returned to their ships, Reeves remained in the command center, studying the map. The next few days would determine the fate of the war. The surprise of their initial attacks had given them an advantage, but it wouldn't last. She thought of Earth, still under siege from the Jarkai forces that had broken through. The planet's remaining defenses were holding, but barely. They needed this victory. The Empire thought it was over. She said quietly to herself. They're about to learn that humans don't know how to stay down. Emperor Thrazakar stood in the grand hall of the Imperial Palace. For 10,000 years, the Jarkai Empire had expanded across the stars, conquering every species they encountered. None had ever threatened their homeworld. Until now. This is impossible, he hissed through serrated teeth. His long fingers gripped the edge of the holographic display showing the approaching human fleet. We destroyed their forces. We took their colonies. High Commander Vextal bowed low, his crystalline armor reflecting the dim purple light of the chamber. The humans had a second fleet, Emperor, hidden on their red planet, ships unlike any we have seen before. And you failed to detect this? Thrazakar's voice was cold with fury. They used technology based on our own designs but modified in ways we did not predict. They have been learning from us, adapting. The Emperor turned back to the display. The human ships were cutting through his defenses with shocking efficiency. They had already reclaimed much of their solar system. His forces at Europa had been crushed. The reserve fleet sent to reinforce Earth had been intercepted and destroyed. And now somehow these primitive humans had brought the fight to the Jarkai homeworld itself. How long until they reach us? The Emperor demanded. Hours, not days, Vextal replied quietly. For the first time in his 300-year rule, Emperor Thrazakar felt fear. Aboard the USS Reckoning, Admiral Hayes and General Rodriguez stood side by side on the bridge. After weeks of battles across the solar system, their combined forces had pushed all the way to the heart of the Jarkai Empire. I never thought I'd see this day, Hayes said, looking at the view screen showing the alien homeworld. Its surface glittered with crystal cities and purple energy fields. When we lost at Alpha Centauri, I thought that was the end. It would have been, Rodriguez replied, if not for Project Phoenix. Behind them stood representatives of humanity's resistance. Lieutenant John Miller, whose hometown had been destroyed in the first attacks. Dr. Elizabeth Carter, whose scientific breakthroughs had made their advanced fleet possible. Colonel Patricia Wright, whose tactical genius had led them to victory after victory. We're being hailed, reported Communications Officer Samantha Lee. It's coming from the Imperial Palace. Hayes nodded. On screen. The face that appeared was alien and terrible. Emperor Thrazakar's skin was pale gray, stretched tight over a skull-like face. Multiple eyes blinked in sequence around a mouth filled with needle-like teeth. You dare to invade the homeworld of the Jarkai? The Emperor's voice was translated by the ship's computers. In 10,000 years, no species has ever been so foolish. Hayes stepped forward. You gave us no choice. You attacked our world without warning or provocation. You destroyed our cities, killed our people. As is our right, the Emperor replied. The strong conquer the weak. It is the way of the universe. Then you should understand what happens next, Hayes said coldly. We are now the strong. You are the weak. On tactical screens around the bridge, officers could see the full human fleet moving into attack formation around the Imperial homeworld. 300 advanced ships, their weapons locked on targets across the planet's surface. Impossible, the Emperor said, his voice losing its confidence. You were defeated. We destroyed your fleet. What you destroyed was our first fleet, Hayes explained. What you failed to understand about humans is this: we don't accept defeat. We adapt, we rebuild, and we return stronger than before. He looked at the alien ruler with cold determination. This is humanity's second assault. Prepare to negotiate terms for your unconditional surrender. The Emperor's multiple eyes blinked rapidly. And if we refuse? Rodriguez stepped forward. Then we will do to your world what you tried to do to ours. The threat hung in the air for a long moment. Then the Emperor's shoulders slumped slightly. I will consider your terms. When the transmission ended, a cheer went up from the crew. After months of fighting, months of being on the defensive, they had turned the tide completely. He'll surrender, Rodriguez predicted. The Jarkai rule through fear and strength. Now that we've shown greater strength, his own people would turn against him if he continued the war. Hayes nodded. Send word to Earth. Tell them it's almost over. As the message was sent, Lieutenant Miller approached the two leaders. Admiral, General, permission to speak freely. Granted, Hayes replied. Sir, I lost everything to the Jarkai invasion. My family, my home. Part of me wants to see their world burn like they burned ours. He paused, struggling with his emotions. But another part knows that would make us no better than them. Rodriguez placed a hand on the young officer's shoulder. That's exactly why we'll win this war, Lieutenant. Not just because of our ships or weapons, but because we remember our humanity even in our darkest moments. 3 days later, in the Idor, Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Thrazakar signed the treaty officially ending the war. The terms were harsh but fair. The Jarkai would withdraw from all human territories. They would pay reparations for the damage they had caused. Their military would be reduced and monitored to ensure they could never threaten Earth again. As the Emperor pressed his six-fingered hand to the document, finalizing the agreement, Hayes thought about the cost of victory. Thousands of human lives lost, cities destroyed, colonies reduced to ruins. But Earth had survived. Humanity had survived. And they had learned valuable lessons about themselves and their place in the universe. "This is not just a victory for Earth," Hayes said in his address to the combined human and Jarkai delegates. "This is a new beginning for both our species. The Jarkai Empire believed that strength comes only from conquest. We have shown them that true strength comes from resilience, from innovation, and from refusing to surrender even when defeat seems certain." Later, as the human fleet prepared to return home, Hayes stood with Rodriguez in a quiet corner of the palace gardens. "What happens now?" Rodriguez asked. Hayes looked up at the stars visible through the crystal dome overhead. "We rebuild. We help those who lost everything in the war. And we prepare." "Prepare for what?" "For whatever comes next," Hayes replied. "The galaxy is bigger than we knew, filled with more dangers and wonders than we imagined. The Jarkai won't be the last advanced species we encounter." Rodriguez nodded. "But next time we'll be ready from the start." As the USS Reckoning left the Jarkai homeworld, carrying the human delegation back to Earth, Hayes took one last look at the alien planet through the view screen. The Empire had thought it was over when they destroyed Earth's first fleet. They had believed victory was certain. They had learned, as all who faced humanity would learn, that humans were at their most dangerous when defeat seemed most certain. It wasn't technology or weapons that made them formidable. It was their refusal to accept that anything was truly over until they decided it was.